Hello, everybody. Welcome to IntelliJ channel on YouTube. And my name is Anton Arhipov. I'm a developer advocate at JetBrains. And today I have a special guest to talk about LLMs. And that's going to be very interesting. Stephan Janssen has developed a very interesting plugin for IntelliJ to work with LLMs and, to hack with them. Before we start, we have some special slides. I have some special slides. First of all, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them as they appear, and we're gonna try to address them. We have some people in the chat to help answering those questions as well, and we're gonna take the most interesting ones live also. Besides that, this session is recorded. So if you don't have enough time to watch it fully in the first go, feel free to return and, watch it again. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss the next sessions. And if you have any feedback, feel free to comment on the video. Leave your comments in social networks. And of course, we want to hear back from you in this survey. The link is on the display right now, the QR code and the link, jb.jg22082024. That's a long link, cryptic one. So that's all the information for the stream right now I have for you. And I would like to introduce Stephan. Hello, Stephan.
Hey, Anton.
Very excited about the session. We met before at the conference. Of course, that was the Devoxx conference. And we also chatted about LLMs in the past. And you have developed a very nice plugin. You probably want to talk about it today. Like we know you want to talk about it today, but there is a story, right? There is a story why it happened, why it all happened.
Absolutely. Well, I've actually included the screenshot from the live stream, or the stream from Devoxx Belgium last year, which was about 10 months ago. And you did an amazing demo during the opening keynote on the AI assistant that you guys have developed in IntelliJ. And people were really amazed and interesting. And during your demo, I asked, and you can actually see on the subtitles, I asked, is there any strategy to have a large open source LLM support with a plugin which runs locally? And at that time, you said like, well, there's no plan or nothing is happening yet in that direction. And I was like, okay, waiting, and months went by, and I was like, oh, is there going to be like a local model? And nothing happened. And so basically around March, I said like, okay, well, I'll just develop the plugin myself. I had never developed an IDE plugin at all. I had to switch from Maven to Gradle for the building. So that was also a new experience. So it was an interesting experiment. And basically, after I think about 1 month, I had a first prototype that I said, well, I mean, I developed it for me. I really wanted to play with local models myself. But then I decided like, well, maybe other people will have also use of this. And I open sourced it on GitHub. And so basically what it is that it's free and open source. It's really a hobby project. I mean, there's no business plan or a major plan behind it. It's really having fun with technology and enabling me to be more productive using large language models. The cool thing is, and I mean, people might say, but Stephan, there's already plugins that do this. There's Tappy, there's Cody, there's so many, there's even ones from Amazon. But the majority of those are not developed fully in Java. I wanted to have a plugin which was fully in Java, and I wanted to use the LangChain4j open source library, which also was announced at Devoxx Belgium last year, and which really has grown in popularity over the last 10 months. So that was really one of my aims of doing this. And of course, my biggest aim was to not only support cloud models, but also local models. And the reason for local models is multiple things, which I'll discuss a bit later on, but often I'm also, on the train or in a plane, and then you miss these AI assistants. And so having a local model does give you that power to also use it when you're not connected. So before I go into the demo, just the key features is that it works locally. So for example, I know a lot of people who are using the plugin because their company do not allow, from a privacy point of view, to share intellectual property with cloud LLM providers, because some really use your prompts as extra training material, and before you know it, your own algorithms, your own codes might actually be used as a data set. And the second one is, of course, for offline development. But also, I mean, Anton, I don't know if you remember, but 10 months ago, when you did the demo, most likely GPT 3.5 was behind it, we had a window context of 4,000 tokens.
Yeah, it was very small. You could even lose some information in the process when you're chatting with the model too much.
Exactly. So 4,000 was basically the maximum you could get 10 months ago. Now we have the maximum is already 2 million tokens. I mean, if you use Google Gemini, you can go up to 2 million. And they told me, or at different talks, they've said even that they have in the labs a 10 million token window context using Gemini. So that's like, 2 million. That's just like 10,000. Right. I think it's more than 40,000 lines of code is 1 million. So we're getting close to like 80,000 lines of code. Just to give you an idea, the plugin itself, the Devoxx plugin, is 79,000 tokens. So it fits nicely in that window context. So nice. I wanted to play with all these different window contexts. And even locally, if you have a local model, yesterday Microsoft released Phi 3.5. It has 131,000 tokens locally on your machine. So that's like just amazing. Nice. The other thing I want to do, Anton, is also this. I call this inter LLM communication. So what you can do, you can ask one question to one LLM, and you create a chat memory. So I'm using LangChain4j for that. So it has a concept of a chat memory. It basically keeps track of all the different messages that you send, and then it cleans the queue once you reach for example, 10 messages. But what you can do is that you can send one message, for example, to a local model, get a response. If you're not happy with that response, you can change the model and go to a cloud one, but still keep the chat memory in place. So the cloud one will know what the previous model answered and maybe correct it. So you can have like different LLMs reviewing each other's prompts by doing this technique, which is like, wow. And then for me, where the excitement is really experimenting with new cutting edge LLM features. And I don't know, if you don't follow this on day-by-day basis, you will miss these. But for example, an interesting new thing is called prompt caching. So I think it was last week, Anthropic, which has the large language model Claude, they support now prompt caching. And luckily, Google with Gemini actually already supported this, but they support it within the API. So the idea is to actually, if LangChain4j, which they have a feature request open, they will support it in the API to support prompt caching, which means I can easily activate that in the plugin. And prompt caching, what it does is that if you send like a big prompt, it will cache the window context. So the next time you send the prompt, you only need to send the prompt and not the full context anymore, because it is stored on the server. So that way you're sending less tokens backwards and forwards. So that's an interesting one. But the one I'm really excited about is LLM sharding. And so LLM sharding, you probably know sharding on databases, where they basically say like, okay, from A to M, we'll go to that database, and then from N to S, we go to that database, and so on. Well, they are starting to do this for large language models as well. So you can actually have multiple machines at home and create some kind of network topology where one machine will do 10 tensor layers, the other one will do 20 layers, and the last one will do 5 layers, and it actually is chained. Now, the result of that is that you can, by using this technique, you can run a large language model locally, which is 405 billion tokens, which is almost equivalent to GPT-4, especially if you look at the latest, like, for example, Llama 3.1 is really, it's a really good, that's an open source model from Meta. They have different flavors. They have 8 and 70 and 405. 405, you can't run it on one portable. With this technique, you can. And this is supported by EXO. It's an open source platform, which I immediately added to the plugin. So the plugin supports this sharding, and that's one of the things I want to demonstrate once we switch to the IDE. And that's my last slide, and then we can go to and look a bit at how it all works. But so the plugin works with a couple of local providers. I think Ollama is the most known one. Ollama, it runs on Windows and Mac. And you basically, I think, Anton, you just recently installed it, right?
Yeah, I tried Ollama just because it was easy to install, and probably that something I have heard that works, and I experimented, and it worked locally perfectly with your plugin. I downloaded it, installed it, I made a few requests, generated some code, and that's nice. I mean, this technology advancement has been tremendous in this 10 months. And remember when we were talking at Devoxx about this 10 months ago, I think there was only GPT for all that was kind of emerging. So the local models were not that common yet. And now in 10 months, we have such a variety.
Correct. Well, the founder of GPT-4 was actually talking at Devoxx Belgium at that time. But there's a secret. Ollama, LM Studio, and I'm not sure GPT-4 all, but I could be wrong. But definitely Ollama and LM Studio, they use Llama CPP underneath. I don't know. I mean, I used to do quite a bit of video editing with parlays and so on. And the Swiss Army knife was FFmpeg. So FFmpeg is like this Unix tool which allows you to slice and change video, get images out of it. Well, in the LLM world, Llama CPP, which is an open source project, is really the Swiss Army knife for LLM. And that's what Ollama is using, and LM Studio behind the scenes. So I'll demo this as well, where we'll just run Llama CPP locally. I can already tell you, and maybe people will ask questions, is Llama CPP faster than Ollama? Well, I did some tests, and Ollama actually does some smart caching already. So they have, Ollama is basically a wrapper around Llama CPP. But that's a really interesting project. You should watch it. It's a guy from, I always pronounce his name incorrectly, Gregorov, I believe, from Hungary. He does an amazing job. And then the other one is EXO. That's a Python library, but it uses an API called MLC or MLX, and there's a C implementation. And this is pure for Apple Silicon. So it uses the GPU, TPUs, or neural processors of Apple Silicon Metal to actually do matrix multiplications, and they use that in EXO. So it's definitely worth looking. And Jan is another one, another wrapper around Llama CPP. And then, of course, the cloud providers. We have Google with Gemini, Anthropic with Claude, OpenAI, of course, Mistral, which is a French company doing some amazing work, Grok, which is super fast inference, and then the Penfra supports all sorts of models. So those are the ones I'm supporting, and I could probably spend days and days adding more models and other providers. I mean, there's so many out there, but with this set, you can already do quite a bit as a developer. Cool. So that's all the blah blah blah. Let's go to the IDE. Unless Anton, you have any questions up to now?
No, I'm excited to see the demo.
Okay, cool. So what I'll do, I've already installed it. I mean, luckily it's already on the marketplace. So you just go into plugins, marketplace, you type in DevoxxGenie and you install it. And I'll try to explain how I use it as a developer. And so as a developer, what I used to do before I had this plugin, I was using a Unix tool code which named code to prompt. And what code to prompt did is that it basically went recursively through your directory, copied all the files, and put it in one prompt. And then that prompt you could give it to a large language model. And that was one of the first things I've implemented. So if I go to, and this is like meta programming, because I'm using the model to actually enhance the model itself. So we are in the project here, and I can do a right click. And I actually have, if you do a right click, you can see here, copy directory to clipboard. And so what it does, as you can see here, it has now, it went through the whole project, and it says, okay, it's 97,000 tokens. Yeah, it has grown over a couple of weeks, but it has now copied the full project into a prompt. So what I can now do, as a developer, you need to pay for certain tools, and so I have, I think, 3 licenses. I pay for Claude, which the web version. I paid for Claude, the API keys, and I pay for Copilot for the auto-completion, which it is very useful. But so, and that's like $20, yeah, and then based on the API key. So now I have my full project. So what I can do, I can go to my browser, go to Claude, and there you have a concept which is called projects. So you can see I have already created a few projects, and one project is the plugin. And so here, I will just remove this. I can actually go in here and say, add a context. So I say it's my project, and I just paste everything which the plugin has copied. And as you can see, it is all the source code, but also the directory structure. That's really important. And so now I've added it, and Claude is doing its magic. There it is. So it says I've used 72% of the knowledge base, and now I can actually chat with the project. Now, this is not in the IDE, but the beauty of this is that this works on my phone. So if I have an idea for a feature, I can start chatting with Claude on my phone about ideas. So for example, I say like, I would like to use the .git ignore file for when we copy files to the clipboard. So I haven't prepared the prompt here, so so I just press enter. It has already done some magic where it basically caches this and all of that. I've probably pressed enter too quickly, but it will hopefully understand what I want to do, and it will suggest how I can implement this type of feature. So it takes a bit
we
of time.
have a comment. We have a comment in the chat. People are saying that it's the fonts are a little bit too small,
okay.
and maybe you can zoom in a little bit.
There it is. Is that better?
I hope it will be better. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
So it knows my full project because I copied it in the clipboard, and I did a very naive sentence. I could have made it a bit clearer that I want to develop this, how it should be done, and so on. But it already is saying like, okay, here's a step-by-step approach. I would need to create a git ignore utility, but it knows about my project. So even here, modify, it knows about this service I have, my project scanner service, and how to actually change it. And the beauty is it only shows what needs to be changed. It doesn't show the full class like ChatGPT often likes to do. And so what I often do is then it's still copying or it's still writing what needs to happen. I basically copy the full response, put it in my GitHub feature, and there I basically am documenting how this feature needs to be implemented. So here I can say just copy, go into GitHub, and basically document this. But the beauty is that I can now continue the conversation with Claude and say, no, this is not exactly what I want. I want to do this and that, and basically have a conversation about, it's like talking to a senior developer how to build a certain feature, but both of us, the senior developer and me, know the full context of the project. Now that's like, I mean, this is look, I get goosebumps on my arm because this is like, bloody hell, And let's be fair, it's not 100% always correct. There's sometimes a few things where it didn't know about that specific class because it didn't take that in consideration. But that's how you then go back and say, like, well, I got an error or an exception here. Here's the printout of the exception, and it will then say, okay, sorry, I need to do this and that. But almost 95% of what it suggests is more or less correct. So if you already are a developer, you know where you need to adjust it, etc. Now, the problem with this approach is that before you know it, Claude will say, sorry, you ran out of messages. You need to wait for another four hours before your credits are reset. And then you go like, damn, it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I was really on a roll. Now I've missed it, right? And that's where you can then switch to the plugin, because that's where I will just then continue within the plugin. So here I'll go to Anthropic, select the model, and the beauty of what I've done there is that I list the price of how much it costs and the maximum tokens that that model actually supports. So there's 200,000 tokens. If I would send 200,000 tokens, it would cost me 60 cents, which is peanuts, right? So what I can do is that I can say here, add full project. So it added the full project, as you can see from this progress bar, because it's 97, I've got only 50%. And then here I can say, how can I develop a feature where I use the .git ignore file to filter the copy or the add project to context. And then I'll trigger it. So now it's basically, as you can see, it's talking to Anthropic, Claude 3.5. Of course, I've got the API key on. I did not enable the streaming because you can do the streaming, but I find that very distracting. I just turn off streaming and it basically is now talking, and then I continue a bit, and then I see if there's a response, and then I can actually see, whatever. Well, I did turn on streaming, it seems.
So I have a question. I have a question. So when you are adding the contents of your project into the prompt, do you have to do it once, or is it being sent every time when you are correcting the prompt, adding new constraints, etc.?
Yeah. So it is by default, it is doing this every time because it's part of the chat memory. But that's why we need this cache control. So once we have the cache control support in LangChain4j, it will only send the delta and not the full prompt. So that will be the difference of having that feature. That's why Google and Anthropic are supporting this, because otherwise we're just constantly resending everything, but the server already has that information. So that's a bit stupid. Right?
We also have a few interesting questions in the chat. I think it makes sense to address them. Yes. So will it follow the industry standards, and will it suggest to make changes after uploading the project? And does it do analysis for the code quality? I think it makes sense to talk about this a little bit.
Sure. Well, I mean, analysis of code quality is you need to prompt and talk to that code. You just need to think about this AI assistant is like an expert developer, and you talk to this expert developer using prompts. So if you say, like, if I go back here, what are the top 10 refactorings I must do on this project, right? So it knows the full project. This web version is already caching it, right? So I don't have to resend it because they, of course, do this themselves. But here it goes. It says, okay, after analyzing the DevoxxGenie plugin project, the top refactoring is number 1, implement dependency injection, introduce a factory, and so on. If you say, hey, what kind of standards should I follow? You can just talk to the assistant, and because you have to be very mindful, Anton, is that I'm doing very naive prompts here, but sometimes the prompt itself can be bigger than the answer. Because if you give it a really valuable quality prompt, you can really say like, okay, you should review your response, do it step-by-step thinking. And oh, by the way, if you don't give an answer, I will kill a kitten. You might laugh. These type of tricks, or you could say like at the end, I will donate $10,000 to a charity if you answer it correctly. And it actually takes that into consideration. So these are a bit of prompt techniques. But
interesting.
What
I do sometimes when I work with tools like this, and I want the response to follow some of the standards, I cannot say they are industry standards, but my requirements, I would be explicit about those, that saying, for instance, the methods should never return null, or there should not be any mutable variables, prefer functional style, these kind of things, right?
Yes.
Then what I see usually 99% of the time, I get a very nice code as a response that follows my requirements.
Yeah, well, that's where it's a good leeway into the prompts. Is that so? If you click this cog icon, it will take you to the settings, and the first one is of course the different local and cloud provider API keys. If you just click on these, it will take you to the website, to download these tools. And if you click on the keys, it will take you to the website where you get your key once you're authenticated and gave your credit card. But one of the features is really important is you have a concept of, so you have the chat memory, and a chat memory always has a system prompt. So the system prompt basically defines the context, like you said, like, okay, this is the default one, but you can edit it. So here it says you're a software developer IT plugin with expert knowledge in programming language. There's some default template shortcuts that you can use, and it has some information about the plugin itself, where it's hosted, etc. But here you can really make it like, for example, if you would be working on a Kotlin project, you could say you're an expert Kotlin developer, right? And you said like, all the answers should be functional, using functional code examples, etc. So that's really important. You define this. The only thing I still add, which you can't edit, is that I add a line where it says always reply using markdown, because the markdown is then actually parsed to make sure that the output is nicely visualized. So I'm doing some rendering from markdown to HTML, etc., to make it a nice output. But the cool thing here is that you can create custom prompts, which I remembered during Devoxx UK, you also did a show of these, how was it called, template or active templates? I don't know the name anymore, Anton. But you definitely showed something where you had like default prompts, and this is the same concept. So I can say add a custom prompt, for example, Javadoc, and then I can say like, okay, write Javadoc for the given class and methods. Make sure it's complete, because the code will be read more than it will be written, for example, right? So I've added the Javadoc, okay? It lists this immediately here. So I can do like here, Javadoc, so it's already completing it. And now I can use let's use a local model. So I'm going to use Llama here. And here it's listing all the models that I've already downloaded. Now, the beauty is that it shows the tokens that it supports. So for example, Llama 3.1, 131 tokens. 3.5 from yesterday, let's try this one, 131 tokens as well. So I'll just execute that one. And it's now executing it on the file which is open. So it will use, hopefully, write Javadoc for the file, this class here, which does not have any Javadoc at all. So it's now busy. I've turned off the streaming. So we'll basically have to wait like, 20, 30 seconds. There it goes. And we'll see, did it write any Javadoc? Not really. So either my prompt wasn't really that well written, or this model is not really that well for coding. So let's try Llama 3.1. and see how it reacts. And maybe let's reset that one. Otherwise, it will take this answer back as well. See how that will do. But I know some people at Red Hat are actually using this plugin just to generate Javadoc for their classes. There you go. So this was pretty fast, like 6 seconds, and Llama 3.1 is known to be better for coding, and it nicely said, okay, well, this is the file I've used. These are the Javadocs, and then I can just copy it to clipboard, or I can insert it. I can insert the code, or I can copy the full prompt response and then put it into GitHub or whatever.
Yeah, with the previous model, you probably would have been more successful if you specified the task more explicitly, right? Hey, give me the response as the same source code, but with Javadoc, with the generated Javadoc, maybe.
Yeah, it's all about the prompt. You need to really you need to tweak the prompts, right? And the prompt should not be one sentence. It could really be multiple sentences explaining really in detail what you want, because it can handle a lot of tokens. I mean, if you look here, I only sent 661 tokens and got 304 back, but this one supports 131,000 tokens. So the more expressive you are in the prompt, the better responses you will get, because the model will know what it is expected from you. So that's one example. So that these are just templates, I call them. The other cool thing as well, if I go back to Anthropic, for example, or let's do Anthropic, because I use really Claude 3.5 Sonnet on a daily basis. You can do like calculate the token cost as well. So I can add again the full project. And then before I send this prompt, I want to know how much it's going to cost me. So it says, okay, well, the tokens is 97,000, 181 files. It skipped quite a bit of files and directories, which I will show you later on. And with this model, it will cost me 30 cents to do this prompt, approximately, right? Because I still haven't entered my prompt here yet. Now, the skipping files, that's again in the settings. So here in DevoxxGenie, you can actually define the scan and copy project feature. And so here you can say which directories should be excluded. So the typical ones, target, node modules, the .ide, the models itself, but also the file extensions that I want to include. So I've done some PHP and Kotlin as well. So I'm including all these. All the other ones are excluded. And I'm even excluding the Javadoc, because the model knows the code better than I do. It doesn't really need the Javadoc. At least that's my experience. But you can just turn this on and off, and you can define what directories or files that need to be added when you click this, add full project to your prompt.
I can suggest another fun optimization that you can do is to not include the method, the bodies of the methods into this prompt, because in many cases you only need the API.
But for Javadoc, you mean? Or what?
Like for any requests. Like if you are trying to optimize if you want to give as much as you could to the model to reason about, but in reality, what you need for many of the tasks, or like to implement something by the model, you could just cut out the bodies of the methods. In many cases, maybe it will actually save you a lot without sacrificing a lot.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Well, it's a great point, and it's easy to implement. Of course, if you want to do refactoring, because like this AI system knows the full project of this plugin, so I can say like, hey, I want to refactor using some kind of builder pattern for this specific class, and so this way you can just do individual. So if I click here on plus, I can just select one file, for example, service, whatever, and it will just use only this class now, not the full project, right? So I'm just laser focused on this file here. And then I can say, refactor this class to be more, how do I say that, performant, whatever. And I'm using Claude Sonnet here. Well, let's use a local one again. That's more fun. So you can, the thing I want to say is that you can filter what you want to put in the window context, and not always, you don't always have to add the full project. You can really be very precise on certain things that you're working, or just say, no, I just want to add just this directory, for example, here. So you can do right click, copy, add directory to prompt context, because I will only be working on those 4 files, right? So here it has answered, and as you can see, it only used this file as a reference, and then it came with some suggestions. I'm not going into detail here, but you can really explore a project, and then it's not 100% yet, but just this is the worst these models will be. It will only improve moving forward, right? And if you just look at the last 10 months, how it has grown and what we can do, this was not possible 10 months ago, even not in your demo. You could not add your full project to it. What's going to happen in the next 2 months, 1 year, 2 years? I call it the quantum superposition state, where it's both frightening and exciting at the same time. Because, the impact it has on me is that I'm more productive, I'm more knowledgeable, and I'm really more productive. I can really create projects much faster because I'm already a good senior developer. But this is really an enormous boost for me, both within the IDE or within the Claude project environment. It's just scary.
Yeah. In the chat, I can see like a common sentiment about this kind of tools is that a lot of people are actually worried if the model output will follow the style, the best practices, and so on. Have you tried instructing beyond what we were saying like previously, supplying some kind of a code style guide?
I have not. So that's why I call this APE, but in Dutch it's called AAP, AAP. So I call it AI Augmented Programming. And I, funnily enough, called it APE because I'm copying what it suggests as an APE without thinking. It's a bit like Stack Overflow, where I find the solution, I copy it, paste it, and look if it works. Yeah, it works. Okay, I'll continue. And that's, of course, not a good practice. But the thing that you can do is the system prompt. You can really define, the system prompt can be really very, very long. So if you go into the system prompt and you say, like, for example, you have certain guidelines or codes formatting or whatever, add it in the system prompt. If you add it, it will actually follow what is in the system prompt, because the system prompt really defines the theme, the mindset of the model. So and that's prompting. That's where you need to just write text and play and try things out. Yeah.
But also another interesting point that from my experience as well, when you're trying to generate some code and the model gives you a response and you are adding the code into your project, and then suddenly you realize that the code that was generated is either deprecated, is using deprecated APIs, or there are some methods that don't exist anymore.
Correct.
So given that IntelliJ IDEA is such a evolving platform, there is a lot of developers changing the code, changing the APIs. Has it happened to you that you received the code and it just didn't work? Yeah.
Well, so I was doing, let me see if I can find it. Well, so here in this project, I was doing some Gemini API development, and the Claude did not know about the latest LangChain4j code. So what I did, I just added more content, and I added basically the LangChain4j project as extra content to the environment. As long as it fits in the 200,000 tokens, I don't have to limit myself to just the code of my plugin, but I can add other libraries to it so it knows about this. Now, with 200,000 tokens, you will not get far enough. So that's why you would need to switch to Gemini. If you go to Gemini, so let's go to Google, I have 2 million tokens. With 2 million tokens, I can add the full LangChain4j project. I can add most likely a big chunk of the IntelliJ API, and then still add my project to it. And then it knows, it's a bit like RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where I'm adding, because the model doesn't know about the latest, I can populate the prompt with all the latest code, so it knows about that within the window context. And with 2 million, you can do a lot. And I mean, I would suggest if you play with this, use the Flash one, because the Flash one, you can use 1 million tokens for $0.04. And that's nothing. And even if it's not 100% correct, I can still at least populate in a RAG type of fashion the full context window to get proper answers. What I've also noticed is that sometimes, it's like with the plugin, it did suggest like outdated, deprecated methods. I give that feedback back to Claude, and often it will actually say, "Oh yeah, you're right. It's very apologetic." It says, "Oh, sorry, I was wrong. This is how you should do it." Or if it doesn't know it, it will find other ways to actually approach the result that you're looking for. I mean, I've told you this before. We are basically living science fiction movies here. It's really crazy. It's really crazy. Before I wrap up, I still wanted to show you two things. So the other thing I wanted to show you is the Llama C. So first of all, like in Llama, I can list the models that I've downloaded. So these are the ones on my desktop machine, but I've got many more on my portable. And so you can see like the Phi one, this one here, is only 2.2 gigabytes big, right? And it has 131,000 tokens. The one that developers often will use is this one, Llama 3.1. That's 4.7 gigabytes. And I do have 64 gigs on my portable. So having a bit of extra memory does help. But there's some solutions on this, which I'll show you later on. But the other one is the Llama CCP project. This is, like I said, the Swiss knife of LLMs. And there, like, if you want to do a specific model, you just have to type in Llama server, the model that you've downloaded. So this is, again, Llama 3.1, and the port it's listening on. So if I do demo 1, it starts. You can see it's initializing, and it's basically now ready. And then in the IDE, I can just select Llama CPP. Let's just do a simple, clean one. Voila, and just say, hey, just to show that it works. And if I go back here, it's basically talking, and voila, and it's just returning the response. And this is returning what the system prompt has. But, this is pretty fast, but this is bare metal. This is like very low level, because you can go into the C code and really see like, okay, how many layers is it using, etc. You see, it shows the model, etc. It's very interesting if you want to go much deeper in what it all does. But yeah, for me, it's very expert level, to be honest. And the last thing I want to show is this baby here, which is called Exo Experimental. And so the Exo Experimental is running. So I've got it running before. And as you can see, I know it might be a bit small. I don't know if it's gonna work. No. So sorry that it's a bit small, but it started. It's a Python library using MLX library to talk to my silicon processor. And it says, okay, your Mac Studio has 128 gigabytes. Let me now start my portable on another machine. And all of a sudden, you will see that one will discover the other one. There it goes. So it found my MacBook Pro, which has 64 gigs. And now together, I have 63 teraflops available to do GPU LLM-based prompting. So now that that's available, it's using the same ChatGPT API. So it's compliant to this API. So if I go now here, and let's do it again, and say hi, just a simple one, hi, you will see here that it will start talking to each other. Well, it's on my MacBook, and it will basically go and figure out the different response to each other. Let me stop this. But the thing is, this is not faster. It will not be faster, but it allows us to actually run models which are much bigger than one machine can handle. So this would allow me to have like a 405 billion parameter model running on 3 machines. I did call it experimental because the development is in full flow yet, so it's evolving very rapidly. And it still has some hooks here and there. I think it just crashed, to be honest, because it didn't reply at all. So that's why it does say experimental, but it's very promising. I think the future for us developers, I mean, as you can see, I work at home. I have no colleagues. I have my AI assistant as my colleague. And if I can have 3 M3 Ultras running the EXO platform, where I can have a 405 billion parameter model, I basically have ChatGPT 4.0 running locally. Of course, it timed out because I killed it, so that's why it says there's an error. But you get the idea. There's still lots of things moving and going in very interesting directions. And this plugin, for me, like I said, it's a hobby project. I want to experiment with it and see what's possible, the latest and greatest within the LLM environment.
Nice. We had a recent chat with colleagues discussing, like, is there still the need for cloud models if you can do everything locally? Eventually, there is such a huge advancement in hardware. Like, even a month ago, I didn't have like a proper MacBook to run local models, but now I just switched to a new MacBook with M3 Max, and I could have the local LLM running. I could have IntelliJ indexing the project, streaming and screencasting all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So of course, not everybody can afford this kind of machine, but the trend is going from the hardware from one side, and from the other side, we have so many local models now emerging.
Yeah.
And the context window is getting bigger, and now we even can spread to multiple machines, like with this EXO experiment. So
Yeah.
do you think cloud models are still, like, not, they are still viable, of course, but what could be the use case in the future?
Well, there's multiple. Inference time, I mean, the response time with a cloud model, because they have GPUs, A100s, and so on, they can scale much more easily, and so you will have faster response. But the reason why I didn't do the autocomplete implementation is that because that's often just one-liners with a bit of, auto-completion, but not really logic. That's why I prefer this non-streamable response, because I'm really thinking about the project structure and more questions. And so for me, inference or the response time is not important. If I get the response 1 hour later and it's quality response, then that's more valuable than I have sub-second response. So that would be against cloud models. But of course, the window context, I think having a 2 million window context locally, I don't think that's going to happen this year, maybe next year, right? The cool thing is, I think I'm thankful, I never thought I would say that Mark Zuckerberg was a bit late in the game. And he saw that he was too late with OpenAI and with Google. So he decided with Meta AI, let's do it all open source and just make it available. So Llama 3.1, which is from Meta, it's basically his way to undercutting the whole cloud LLM business model and sabotaging that. But at the benefit for us developers, because now we have these quality models that we can run locally. And to be honest, if we've already plateaued the models, so let's say that it never gets any better than what we are at this level, it's already at a quality which is helpful for me already. And it already runs locally. So even if development and R&D and evolution would stop here, it's already a tool that I would use on a daily basis, which I already do today. But I do combine it with cloud and local because, well, it's an open source project. I don't care if they index, they've already indexed it anyway, right? Of course, if you work at a company and you do not want to work with clouds, then this plugin can help you with local models. And they are getting better. So it's very hard to say what the future is going to bring. But what I do know is that the models that we have today are the worst as they ever will be, because it will only get better.
Yeah, that's true. About the quality aspect of it, you mentioned. So you listed quite a few local models, and there was also a question in the chat. How do we know which model is better for coding? There is no common knowledge yet developed by the community that that model is better for coding, or that model is better for a Java doc generation, and so on.
It's an easy answer. I mean, if you just looked at the demo I did with the Java doc, I got more or less garbage from Phi. I mean, it couldn't handle the prompt. The prompt was, of course, just a few lines. So, but I did get a valid response from Llama 3.1. So you need to do a bit of trial and error. I mean, these Ollama models, or which Ollama hosts and allows you to download and run it locally, you can just download them. I mean, I've got 20 models locally on my portable, and just play and mix and match. Just select one and see what response you get, and play with them. I mean, the ones I'm using today more is the Llama 3.1 and the 70 billion one. This is the 8 billion. This is 70 billion. Those are the ones I'm using. And because this one came out yesterday, I'm playing with this one. But like the Mistral large one, it's also a great one. Open code interpret. You just need to play with it. It also depends on the window context you want, right? If you want to do your full project and it's less than 131 tokens, that will already dictate which ones. It will filter already the first model selection, right?
Yeah.
But you need to do trial and error.
And the problem with that is that if someone takes time and compares them all and says, okay, this one is better, then a week after, some other model comes out with a new version and becomes better than your list that you prepared. So it's almost impossible right now to actually have a top list of models that are better for something. You need to experiment and try it, right?
This is where, like, if you go to the Ollama one, you can say like most popular, and it will list like the ones which are most popular, and it has like this card where it gives more information. So it actually shows you, okay, it has an 8 billion and a 70 billion. There's more. Okay. There's also a 4. I think that's 3. That's a 3. That's not a 3.1. But you can basically look at these model cards, so to speak, and get more information about what is available, what it does. So like here, this is a 405 billion one, which is 229 gigabytes in size. That one works with the EXO platform on multiple machines. And sometimes here you will see a bit more information about, for example, here, let me make it a bit bigger, the score it has on, for example, coding. So let's see if it's there, human eval. I don't immediately see it here, but sometimes there's like entries where it says for coding, and it will actually then you can compare how it matches against the other ones, right? So that's already a first indication of okay, that's probably going to be a good one based on the matrix that they often document with the model. There's one thing I want to just show as one last slide for the people who are interested, is that, I mean, I open sourced this project, and I've got a couple of people who have actually did some pull requests, which I'm grateful for, and thank you. But there's still a few features which I would love to see, which I don't want to develop myself, and the community can develop. So I was thinking about, okay, well, let's introduce a bounty program for 2 features that I would love to see developed by the community. I will not develop it myself. So the idea is support a conversation history is a very important feature. What it does, and that's Copilot does this, is that you chat and then you start a new one, but the previous response is gone because you've created a new conversation. And so having a history of your conversations allows you to go back to the previous responses. And that's really a very important feature that I'm missing from my plugin. And the other one is more an experimental, is the tap auto completion, but with using a local model. So I would be interested if people are, have some ideas how to implement that. I've tried it, and it was actually doing the tap is not difficult, but having the response nicely inserted at the place where you did the tap is a bit more tricky. And so to motivate developers out there who are interested, contact me if you want to do one of these two projects, and in return you will get a full week combi ticket, which is worth 975 euros. So that's my promotion to my guerrilla marketing for the plugin, if you don't mind.
All right.
Cool. Any other questions, Anton?
Well, there were some comments, and people were chatting between each other in the chat, discussing whether or not developers will be jobless in in no time when these tools get better. But I think we still just in the beginning of the whole path with LLMs and applying AI-based tools, and I think developers will just get more productive by applying those. I think I want to switch
Can I just
to my sure.
I mean, we're definitely. I mean, I did this photo app for Devoxx Belgium where you can upload photos. I developed that in 16 hours with a model, which it would normally take me 3 weeks. But to be honest, it's still not at a level where it would create a full project without any errors. So we're definitely not at that level yet. And you still need to feed the user requirements, and you still need to deploy it and so on. So there's still a lot of work, but we're just going to work on a higher level of abstraction. I think as a developer, our job will change, that we'll just on top of abstraction layers. So we'll work on a higher level, I think.
Yep. So yeah, just a few outro slides here. This was an interesting presentation, really interesting. I hope you motivated people to give it a try and try LLMs locally with the plugin in IntelliJ. And please, everybody, share your feedback. We would like to hear your thoughts about the session and about the subject. That's the QR code for the survey. And what else? What else is there? We have some contacts or some information about the resources. DevoxxGenie is the plugin that Stephan just demonstrated, and there is a Twitter plugin, Twitter account. Sorry, not the plugin. For that plugin, and you can find it on the marketplace and install it into the IDE. We have a lot of interesting other sessions on this channel, so if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and list all the sessions from the past and educate yourself. With that, thanks for joining us, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel again. And thank you, Stephan, for coming. And have fun, everybody, and try LLMs.
Thank you.